What's going on, everybody? Tonight, we got a little bit of a different podcast going on. Because tonight, I am going to be solo dolo on this podcast. It'll be my first time doing a podcast like this. So, excuse me if I'm, a little bit of back and forth and not know what I'm talking about or rambling on about something that I shouldn't be. Because, like I said, first time doing this. But kind of just wanted to talk about the season so far, ups and downs and weather and the fields, and get into some decoy spreads maybe, or even, future plans for podcast. I don't know, guests, I guess you want to say, some guests coming in or just future plans for the company wise even, there's so much stuff that's gone on this year, and from what I've been hearing up in Michigan here, it has been a tough year for everybody around here. The weather for us has been absolutely just such a hit or miss thing. I want to say the Farmer's Almanac said it was going to be a horrible winter, which it's still early, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's December, early December yet, but it's just one of those things where I think it was 40-something degrees out today, and we've been getting nothing but rain, so half of the fields aren't even cut, and the fields that are cut, the farmers have tilled it under, which, hurts us as hunters, but for them, you can't really even complain about what they're doing and making a living, obviously, doing it. It seems like, I don't know, there's so many different variables about birds leaving the area or not sticking around the area too much, which obviously, with the fields being tilled under and only certain fields being cut and left up or whatever it is, I've heard a lot of different things this year about the migration, which our mallard just showed up pretty recently, actually, which we've been getting into some here and there throughout the year. But, I've heard stuff about the fires up in Canada, maybe, harming the nest, or during the nesting season, I should say. And I don't know. There's so many different variables that go on throughout the migration. I heard Canada's froze up and opened back up and froze up and opened back up and yada, yada, yada. Like I said, I mean, we froze up one time, I think it was this year, and that was it for 3-4 days, which it was a hard freeze, like the flooded cornfield that you guys heard about, or the pictures that you've seen on our Instagram. That had an inch of ice on it, which, it's stagnant water, but still, I mean, an inch of ice it was tough. I guess even with being on that topic, on that field-wise, I'll even bring that up. We had some help from our buddies Justin, Robbie, and Ryan this past week. And, I thought to myself, there's an inch of ice on it. I knew the warm front was coming in and figured that, why not try to open this hole and be the first hole that's open and see if the ducks find that and dump in to this hole first. And just out on a limb, which I feel like it's a very important thing that a lot of people overlook with the waterfowl hunting, is the weather and the wind. And, you could say you have a north wind all you want and have this kind of weather this weekend, but a lot of people don't understand that it's not just the weather that you're having in your location, but the weather that's north of you that's really going to determine on what's going on. So there's an app, I think it's Wind Finder on my phone, that I use to see exactly, because you can look at the whole U.S. to see, what the wind's doing in certain locations. So I'll look at that, because the north might have north winds pushing all the way down to you, but you have a south wind, which is probably going to stop birds right in your area, which, maybe it's not even in your area, but if it's, a couple miles or whatever away from you, you check those spots on those heavy north wind days, that from the north, I should say. So the weather that is north of you, or not just in your spot, just around you, I feel like can be a deciding factor on where to hunt, when to hunt, and what to do during a hunt. Because, I mean, the decoy spreads kind of change up. Just everything changes up on those north wind days, those migrator days. And this year alone, with the weather that we've been having, September, it seemed like it was real tough. Us personally and the guys around us, small groups of birds and stuff. And it kind of went right into duck season that way too, where we couldn't really find huge feeds probably until a couple of weeks ago, it seems like. And this season alone, I feel like has gone by just so fast, and it just seems like it's like we haven't even hunted at all this year. I don't know if it's like just from the weather and it not changing real much throughout the year so far or what, but I mean, this weekend's the last weekend for us, and it's nuts. It's already over. Absolutely nuts, which we've been obviously busy with this and Instagram and all the other stuff. It's been just nuts. Last year I feel like we had more bigger feeds and the birds were here a lot earlier, because you'll get those, what a lot of people call it, those even calendar birds that come down like September, early October for us sometimes. And this year we just never ended up getting those birds this year. I feel like, we had small pushes here and there, but then the weather would just warm right up, or fields getting tilled under, and they would just spread out again. And they find those feeds that are non-huntable for us, I guess you want to say. Nobody can get permission on them, and they just go back to there. After you shoot them up in one field, they sit in another field, and that's it, And it gets tough. And I will say too that it's hard to get on the X all the time when the birds are being this way and the weather and fields getting tilled under and stuff. But I know a couple of guys in our area that have been getting, fields even close by to the X fields. And I've done traffic hunts before too. And I think that is a very overlooked hunting situation as well, because I don't think a lot of people do traffic hunts a lot. I think they just want the X fields, and it might go back down to social media and people looking at just pile pictures all the time, which I've been trying to get away from all of that pile pictures and stuff. I mean, our Instagram, that's one thing, but our personal stuff, that's a whole different thing. But those traffic hunts, man, big spreads, a lot of calling, getting those birds, like, to think that that's the new feed, that all the other birds switched over to it. You don't always have to be on the X. If you can get underneath those birds, then so be it. But say you can get on those birds and you got guys in between you, like between the X field and the roost, that are trying to do, the traffic spots. It's one of those things where we've had to deal with it in the past too. And you can't do nothing but applaud those guys for even trying to get, they're just thinking outside of the box and getting underneath the birds. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing right there. It's a frustrating thing, don't get me wrong, but it's a very smart thing to do that I feel like is getting bigger and bigger, but at the same time, I don't see it often, I feel like the migration this year in general, not even in Michigan, now that I think of it, all over the place has just been slow for everybody. Don't get me wrong, there is obviously a migration, but nothing like it usually is. I don't know. It's just been personally, it's been a tough and kind of frustrating year. It's been a discouraging year for us, or for me personally. A lot of work that goes into scouting the field and stuff, and I can't really talk much on the water guys, because, I mean, I've seen good and I've seen bad on the water, and the guys that have been in the room and talked to me on the podcast and previous, episodes, good and bad with all that too, where the birds were here, the birds weren't here, and it's I feel like it's very similar. I don't know. It's been such just a hit or miss year, and all the time and effort and gas and everything that goes into it that's overlooked by everybody. It gets tiring after a while, after the hunts that don't go your way, or you don't see the amount of birds or whatever it may be. But the biggest thing is staying positive, because at least you're getting out and are able to hunt. You know, that's one thing that I've been noticing too, where hunting just with people that appreciate the small things. You know, you shoot 5-10 birds or whatever it is, and just appreciating it. Not even 5-10 birds. I mean, I'm talking 1 to 5 birds and being happy with that kind of hunt. Those are the kind of people that you want to be surrounded by, I feel like, or that I want to be surrounded by anyway. You know, you deal with these guys that see the Instagram posts, like I said, and all these pile pictures from these guys and stuff, and they're expecting this every single hunt, and it's just everything behind the scenes, you know, that nobody realizes, or, you know, the decoy spreads or calling and understanding the birds, which is a whole different topic. There's so much about these hunts that make it good hunts, and most of those things are not even about the birds. It's just the company and stuff that you're surrounded by, which, you know, grateful to have the group of guys that we hunt with, that I hunt with, even though Trav hasn't came down one time this year, even though he's been asked to multiple times. But, you know, just being grateful for the small stuff, and it's a very humbling thing, this bird hunting. You know, it's I don't know. Just the respect level, I guess you want to say. I feel like I've been rambling already for 11 minutes or whatever it is. But I'll bring up the decoy spreads wise, even for us that we've been running. We've been running the SX decoys, so big shout out to those guys. And more realistic spreads than anything. We hunted with Robbie and Justin and Ryan Thanksgiving weekend, I think it was. And that was the first time I used silhouettes, and I can't tell you how long. And I was shocked on how well they did, even though I bash silhouettes all the time. But worked fantastic for us that hunt. But we've been running, honestly, unless it's like north wind days or big pushes or whatever it may be, I don't know, 4 to 5 dozen decoys. No like L-shaped spreads or J spreads or anything. I'm running more of like pods and big groups, especially if you got the weather for it. I'll run like big groups off to the right or to the left or whatever it may be, because what I look into in the mornings for setting up decoys, I look up like a straight line, but to the left or right, depending on the wind. We'll say it's a east wind and I'm facing south on a cross shoot, or even north. I'll go northeast wind. Right? No, northwest. I'm sorry. Northwest. And I'm facing south. We'll run with. On the left-hand side, I'll run a little amount of decoys with some fingers, making some pockets out of it. And I'll run everything, like the majority of the decoys, where I feel like if you're scouting good, you know, you'll understand like where the birds are, how they are in the field. Are they spread out? Are they in tight? What are they going to be? I'll run a big group off to the right on a northwest wind, like I said. I'll run a big group off to the right of me, and then I'll kind of trickle it all the way down, so they think that the big feed or most of the food is off to my right. So even if I don't care if I got to run the decoys, 50 yards to my right and to my left, I'll run the decoys 100 yards and just trickle them, like just barely sprinkle any decoys to my left. They got to pass all those decoys to get to that big feed where they're at. And, sometimes you'll get some birds that'll land way out to your left and stuff. Don't get me wrong, but with calling and stuff like that, you can bring those birds all the way into you. And like I said, even if they go past you to get to the big group of birds, they still got to pass you and the hole and all the guns in the blind to get back there to give you actually a shot. So, like I said, we're running 4 to 5 dozen full bodies. Luckily we're, grateful enough to be able to run 4-wheelers and stuff like that. And if the field is dry enough, trucks out there, obviously. But, I feel like there's everybody that you talk to is running like L's or J's or just your basic spreads. And I think that personally, and this is all like personal talk on my end, a lot of the videos I watch and people watch, I don't even look at the videos for the numbers of birds or anything else besides one, how the birds react, because I feel like there's not enough people that understand bird language or lingo, whatever you want to say, and understand how they're reacting or anything, because that can change the whole calling aspect even, because even like this past weekend, Saturday, I think we shot 35 geese, I want to say it was, but every group of birds seemed like they wanted something different, whether it to be no calling, heavy calling, light clucks, whatever it was, like they wanted something different. But understanding the bird language on how they're flying or coming in, that's a huge thing to understand. The bird language, I feel like, is, and I've said it before on podcasts, like one of the top things to actually like look forward to, or like look into. Because if you don't understand that, which obviously everybody doesn't know everything about waterfowl hunting, but the bird language to calling and stuff, that's can make or break a hunt. There was a hunt last year, I think it was, and we were calling and no birds wanted to work in. Next thing you know, I was like, you know what, I'm just putting the calls down, and sometimes obviously that's the best way to do it. Didn't have to call one time, and I think we ended up with like a 9 or 10 man limit, just understanding wise, like the birds and stuff. But I don't even know where I was going with all of that. But because I completely lost my train of thought. But just understanding all of that stuff is a huge thing with like decoy spreads or calling, and understanding the birds that are in your area, how pressured they are. Are you hunting the water where the birds are always pressured? Like, we're going to have Sean come back on here soon and do a podcast where me and him are going to talk about decoy spreads even more. But, we got a couple guys, even like the calling aspect or like the birds in different areas that are going to be on here and talking about that kind of stuff. But the realism, I guess, I think that's where I was going at. The realism of the spreads and stuff is like my biggest thing. I'm not following the next guy. I'm watching these videos. I'm learning off of the decoy spreads, how far out they're getting with like the decoys and stuff. I mean, it's crazy. Some of these guys that are running decoys 200-300 yards away from them, it's like, how are you guys getting birds right into the hole? So, just learning off of that kind of stuff. I don't really care, like I said, about numbers on videos and stuff. The decoy spread is what gets me, and I think that's why the waterfowl hunting and the turkey hunting for like calling aspect and stuff is such a passion of mine, because of tricking those birds into being spots where they're not, maybe not comfortable in, or like, we always talk about there's an X within the X, but getting those birds into your X, I guess you want to say, it's a, I don't know. I love being able to trick those birds enough with just our decoys and getting them in close. That the realism spreads for me, and I'm not saying for everybody, but works best for me. And it might be just me in the morning because I'm so anal about decoys and stuff. One person moves a decoy or sets a decoy wrong. I don't care if it's 2 foot, I got to move it, or if it's looking at me wrong. I'll find it and I'll move it. You can ask anybody in our group, and I think they've even said it before. I'm so anal for whatever reason about decoy spreads. I don't know. It's just one of those things. But I will say, before hunts and stuff like that, obviously the scouting, which I'm hearing more and more of people putting in that work, but the scouting aspect of it all is way more important than people think. It's so much more of like a science, I feel like, where like you can't just pass a field and expect to go out there the next day not knowing how the birds were or where they flew to. I go out there and scout. I'll sit on a field for 30 minutes and to see how they are in the field or where they're roosted at or whatever it may be, just the small details that could even make or break a hunt. And there's just so many different things and variables. And like I said, the bird language of how they're flying, like the calling, how they are in the field. Like you kind of want to match that hatch. And I feel like me and Paul talked about that pretty well when he was in last. And I don't know. There's so many different things that I see people do, and it's just like, man, like, why are you even trying that right now? You know, it's I don't know. It's I don't even want to say trying because everything might work. You just never know until you try. But I don't know. I don't even know where I was going with that one either. Like I said, this is my first time doing a solo podcast, so it's, I guess, getting all my rants out in one thing. Like I said, it's been a humbling season, so it's I don't know. It's been a stressful season, I guess, for us with even just trying to get footage and getting people in town. We've had some guys from out of town come in, and you know, I haven't been able to get any of our camera guys in this year just because it's like I don't know how good the hunt's going to be, and you know, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's horrible with bird numbers wise. But yeah, I don't know. It's been tough. It's been tough. The dogs have been doing pretty good, though. I will say that. A lot of work that needs to be done with the dogs, though, this summer. I always say it. This summer, I really need to get on these dogs and work with them together. And it's nice to finally get them out there separately and knowing, and even together, like knowing what I got to work on and what the future will hold for them guys working together. But I don't know. Talked about weather, talked about, you know, wind, decoys, a little bit of everything. You know, I've been getting a lot of questions too about a lot of different topics, which we you know, previously with people on and stuff, we'll talk for, I don't know, an hour to 2 hours. And I think the future podcasts to come, we might get some guys in, whether we do 1 or 2 podcasts, and, you know, maybe not drop right away, but stick to one topic, because there's so many different topics that I've been told or asked about, which are great topics, but that I think a lot of people are, you know, nervous to ask other people. But you know, they shouldn't be, because everybody was at a learning point at one point where they have a bunch of these questions at YouTube or no one can answer for them, and they feel stupid or whatever they feel to ask the questions. And I'm hoping with this podcast we're able to teach people not just about waterfowl hunting in general, but, you know, maybe fishing and turkey hunting and deer hunting a little bit more. You know, me and Trav will probably get on here soon and talk about, you know, late season stuff about the deer and how the season is going for him and what they've been seeing out that way, that side of the state. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of good things to come in the future for the podcast. A lot of good people coming on, a lot of good topics to be talked about, a lot of good learning opportunities for a lot of people. And, you know, me and Trav talk about it all the time. The appreciation that we have for everybody that listens in and gives feedback in, it definitely does mean a lot for us. You know, doing it for a little bit now, and it's nice to get this feedback and the positive feedback from people and new topics to talk about. And knowing that, you know, we're doing a good thing and people appreciate what we're talking about. So that's a very positive thing for us. But I don't know. I just wanted to get on here and talk, you know, about the season a little bit and the struggles that it's been this year with the weather, the ups and downs, and maybe help out a little bit about decoy spreads or what to look for in the weather. We've been very fortunate with the fields that we've had this year. We've had maybe 3 or 4 main fields that we've really relied on this year, and luckily we have them, because if not, this season would have been just horrible. Whether it be many different variables from freeze-ups in Canada and us not really getting the weather and whatnot, but it's very fortunate for what we have. And I guess that's even a topic to talk about too slightly, is the relationships that you build with the farmers, which me and Paul also talked about. So if you haven't listened to that one, go back and talk about or listen to that one. But we talked about even like the relationships that we build with the farmers, even after season, talking to them, just getting to know the people other than just being able to hunt their property goes such a long way. And I'm so fortunate to have the I can't even think of the word, fortunate to know the people that I know and to have the relationship that I have with these property owners that we are able to get on and hunt. Just so grateful for it, and I can't thank them guys enough. And they don't think that they do a lot for us, but they do way more than they know. But it takes time to build that trust up with these guys, and you guys can't just go up to it one time a year or whatever and think that everything's hunky-dory and you got it for years to come. It takes time. It takes more than once to go up and talk to them. It's you got to build that relationship up. You have to keep at it and keep up with them, and just communicate. Communication is a huge thing. Absolutely huge thing. But like I said, I just wanted to jump on, talk about this year, the ups and downs, like I said, the weather, the birds compared to last year even. I mean, our mallards, I feel like, just even showed up now, just like last year. Our mallards didn't show up till the last 2 weeks of season. Kind of touch on decoy spreads where, like I said, me and Sean are going to come on and get more in depth with it all, calling and understanding the birds, which I can go on and on about all of that too. And a little bit of the plans for the future. I know this isn't a super long podcast, but, just scratching the surface on some of the topics that'll be coming up here soon. And like me and Trav said before too, if you guys ever, look at or listen to these or follow us on Instagram or Facebook, tune in to tune in and get a hold of us on any other topics that you guys can think of or questions that you guys have. Me and Trevor are always open to answer any questions. We love hearing the feedback and honestly just talking to people that are getting out there and hunting and hearing what you guys are seeing or what you guys are doing, or this works for you guys, this doesn't work for you guys. I will say what doesn't work for me are dive bombs. So shout out to Justin and Ryan and Robbie. No dive bombs for me. But that's way off topic. But no, last but not least, I want to thank everybody that supports us, and even like the sponsors and stuff with GK Calls, Gator Decoys, Migra Ammunition, the SX Decoy guys, and even like the Flipping Birds apparel. I mean, those guys, and even like the guys that help us out with even the cups that we have and other apparel that we do. We just want to thank everybody, because we wouldn't be really anything without you guys. So I don't want anybody to think that we don't appreciate them. But no, I just got on here. Like I said, first time doing this by myself. Rip looks pretty hungry because he's staring at me right now. So we're going to get back and feed him. and hopefully finish this season off strong and wait till the split, maybe deer hunt a little bit more, take some time off and actually get to sleep in, because I feel like this year I've slept in 2 or 3 times maybe since August. So it's way overdue, I'll tell you that. So, but until next time, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in and listening every week. But yeah, until next time. Thanks.